Hello from Kazan, I'm Tian and welcome to Cooperation in Transformation, a special program focusing on the BRICS Summit 2024. The three-day BRICS Summit in Kazan wrapped up on Thursday. Both at meetings of BRICS Wednesday and BRICS Plus Thursday, China's voice has been well heard as a strong advocate for Global South. Chinese President Xi Jinping called for building a BRICS committed to peace and embracing the vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security. He said BRICS should stay committed to innovation as well as working to achieve green and sustainable development. China encouraged building a bloc committed to justice as the international power dynamics undergo profound changes and facilitating people-to-people exchanges, advocating for harmonious coexistence among all civilizations. Among them, the strong call for peace as well as China's commitment for establishing centers for cooperation and capacity building for the Global South are most welcomed. As the meetings proceeded, I reached out to voices from the Global South for their thoughts. These two gentlemen are from conflict-inflicted Lebanon. Their way to Kazan for the summit has been long and tough. They showed a strong support for China's call for an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East now.
The support of all countries in the whole world was very, very important, especially the Chinese one. Yeah. We have more than 1 million displaced people. The war continues. It's very awful. You can find in my country a lot of families on the street, on the coast, next to the sea, without houses, without flats. It's a disaster. We need to stop the war, and we appreciate what China do and what all the BRICS summit do to stop this war.
This week, China has been sending 58 tons of humanitarian medical aid to Lebanon. How much do you think these kind of materials can be of support for the Lebanese people?
What is important for the Lebanese people in this crisis now, or in this war, it's the medicine. And because, as you know, in Lebanon, we have a 4 years economical crisis. The whole medic center, the whole medic hospitals, everything concerning the health, it's
default. They have problems.
We have some defaults, and especially the Israeli targeting the hospital, or at least they threaten the hospitals. If you go to the south, for example, and you see where there is the conflict, take action, the very, very short way to reach the hospital, the nearest hospital, it's around 30 kilometers. So we need to push just to give the Lebanese people those medical aids, because they are very important.
China is always helping Lebanon. Concerning the Chinese aid sent to Lebanese people, this is not the first time. China also is a part of the United Nations forces between the Israeli and the Lebanese border. They are protecting yes, they are peacekeeper all the time, and this is not the first time they help the Lebanese government, not only the Lebanese people. This time they send humanitarian aid. They send medicines, they send the equipment, maybe they send generators. This is very important to the people in need in Lebanon. And this is great from the Chinese government.
Ahmad, Nadil, I know both of you came a long way in order to get to Kazan for the BRICS Summit, because the way from home to here has not been a safe one, particularly in Lebanon. Tell me more about how you managed to get here, and what about the way back home?
It was very risky to come here, because if you know Beirut, I don't know if you know Beirut, it's a small city. Yeah. In the middle there is the airport, and the bombing, it's beside the airport. And there is no reservation. All the international flights are
they stopped flying to Beirut.
Yes. We have only the Middle East Airlines, the national airlines only working. They have not more than 4 or 5 flights per day. So the reservation was very, very hard to find. And
we fly through another country via Istanbul. We go to Istanbul first, then we waited a lot of time, then we traveled to Moscow, then from Moscow we took the flight to Kazan.
What is important now, we don't know.
But we are thinking how to go back now.
Yeah,
this is the problem, because there are always threats to target the airport. We managed to get the tickets on the way to Kazan, but we don't know if we will be able to do that on the way back.
Welcome back. This is World Inside, our special production, Cooperation in Transformation. I'm Tian in Kazan this week. The BRICS summit, the first of its kind after its latest expansion, has been occupying the headlines throughout the week. It's providing the world with an understanding of the important voices of the Global South, which did not appear often in the so-called mainstream press in Europe. Roger Koppel, a former Swiss politician who has been eager to be an alternative voice in his national politics and media landscape, talked to me about his takeaway at the summit. You heard a lot in the hall, the politicians coming from the BRICS countries talking about multipolar world. Meanwhile, those coming from the middle power, developing country, emerging economies that are waiting on the line as observers also emphasize on this. What do you make of a phrase like this today? I mean, this phrase has been there for some time.
Yeah. I mean, there are people on this planet, they think they want to have a unipolar world, where one country or a group of countries can tell everybody else what are the values, what are the rules that have to be followed. And we see now that there are many interesting, fascinating countries who are just fed up with this arrogant attitude. And I think that this BRICS summit is somehow the epitome, or you can say a symptom of this development, which is a good thing, because we have to work together on this planet. We have just one planet, we have big problems to solve, and it's totally absurd to jump into a new, absurd version of the Cold War.
Now, the BRICS has claimed itself not an anti-Western alliance, but at the same time providing a contribution to seek for fairer share of global governance for developing countries and emerging economies. How would you understand these very different facets of, interesting question?
I think there might be also some different agendas within the BRICS. It's not it's not a homogeneous group.
They're very different.
Very different. And you see it with their final declaration of 133 points. I mean, if you have to bring 133 points, this shows that you cannot just, despotically, fix three agendas. So I would say this is a new way of approaching world relations, and I see with great sorrow, especially in the West, that some antagonistic forces, the Dr. Strangeloves, so to speak, the nostalgics for the Cold War, they have a very strong voice. But this is not the only face of the West. And I think it's very important to see, coming from a Western country, that we see into the mirror. And the fact alone that BRICS is emerging shows that the West is probably a bit on a wrong track. And this is, for me, one of the observations here. And as a Swiss, we're actually totally open-minded to the whole world. Switzerland is such a small country. We have to be partners and friends with everybody. We cannot afford having enemies. And that's why I applaud, and I think it's highly interesting what's happening here.
One of the things going on at the BRICS summit, there are a lot of ideas coming from different state leaders about what the world should be like and how they can contribute. The one is coming from China. The Chinese president, in his speech, talked about BRICS for peace. I'm sure coming from Europe, especially for Switzerland, which is a neutral country, and also earlier tried to organize an event about the Russian-Ukraine crisis, you look into the details of what the Chinese president just proposed. What do you make of the China-Brazil cooperation in proposing a peace plan together with others from the Global South?
I think it is crucially important. I applaud every politician who talks about peace in this world. And I was involved as a journalist. I was an observer. I was traveling with Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, when he was on his peace mission. And of course, he's also very important from a European side in talking to Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, talking to President Lula of Brazil, and all these big players. I think it's totally important, and I hope that China and other countries and the BRICS for peace will succeed, because peace is what the world desperately needs. If you have a war, you should try to work to limit a war, to make it smaller and not to escalate the war. And if I look at some people, you know, in politics saying, well, we have to pour in even more weapons, even more flames, you know, you put in gasoline into the fire, this is a very dangerous path. And therefore, it's important that there are important people on earth, statesmen, who are saying, no, we have to de-escalate. And you have to talk about it first, because before you can act. I mean, you cannot just come up with a solution, but the talks about it is important. This is why I think it's so important also that the UN General Secretary is here in Kazan. He is crucified for this. I mean, which shows you what absolute madness is around, what frenzy. It's great that we have peace-loving politicians here and talking to each other.
But leadership is so important these days when it comes to solutions, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think I'm a Westerner, and I have studied in the United States, in Switzerland. I'm not against the United States, against anybody, but of course we are always in danger, some countries in the West, of becoming too arrogant and thinking only their way or the highway, you know, and probably there are some quarters in politics at the moment who favor this view, but I see also in Europe, I see in the United States, I see changes. There are many people who share, for example, the views of people in other countries, for example, what your president is saying or what Viktor Orban is saying. There is a silent majority here, and this is a good thing, and at the end we will have peace.
At the speech, the Chinese president proposed green transformation and green for the BRICS. Now, among those specific proposals, there are capacity building measures. There are also vision building measures. Coming from Switzerland, you understand the importance of green. So tell me more about your thoughts on these proposals.
I mean, the great danger with these green transformations is how you do it. I'm a great critic of the green transformation in the European Union, because I think it's actually suicidal for the industry and for the economy. In Europe, you see it in Germany, we see traces of it in Switzerland. So I think you have to bring both together. On the one hand, you have to protect our environment. This is totally important. I mean, look at Switzerland. We are a very environmentally minded country. But on the other hand, I mean, there is the longing for prosperity. And this is what fascinates me about China. You are an economic powerhouse, but on the other hand, you're also having this great priority of greening the economy without destroying it. And this is probably something we could also learn from.
China has been working on the high quality productive capacity rather than so-called what some call as the overcapacity, because the world needs as much green as possible. But at this point, for example, electronic vehicles has become such a political and even geopolitical issue. What do you make of the reality of that debate in Europe?
Well, I'm a strong defender of the German automobile industry because I think it's such a great industry, and as a historian, I admire these achievements of the German car industry. And therefore, I say also the traditional fuel engine has its place, and probably they overdid it a bit in their electrification of cars. But of course, I mean, I see what's happening in China, and you are somehow conquering world markets, which forces the Germans to be more innovative. So that's a very lively and good experience we have now. It's the competition makes everybody better.
And also cooperation, because they are also producing green electronic vehicles in China, and also there are joint ventures inside Germany. Investment coming from China in green industry in Germany as well, and Switzerland.
We only have one planet, and I mean, come on. humankind is doomed to cooperate. We have to cooperate. Even sometimes we don't want to cooperate, but we have to cooperate because the problems sometimes are so big that it just goes together. And if one part thinks it can do without the other, it just, you know, it's totally against reason, it's against common sense. And therefore, again, coming back to BRICS, it's great that we have alternative ways of self-organization. This is something very Swiss. You know, you can say there is a self-organization. We help ourselves. We just don't want other big guys to dictate what we have to do. So I look at this whole developments as a sign of a very positive overall trend.
To Switzerland, geographically a small country, but very powerful economic and trade. How is what the BRICS are talking about in terms of trade rules and order important also to your country?
Absolutely. I'm in favor of the so-called rule-based order. I'm against the value-based order. Because when you have a value-based order, there are some countries that think their values are more valuable than others, so they think entitled to just throw the rules away. Of course, there is always the question, do those people who talk about rules always follow the rules? I don't know whether China, they say sometimes China doesn't follow the rules of the WTO. The European Union definitely has some protectionist approach, even the United States. This is a bad thing, and I think we have to enter and we have to see the positivity of free trade, and therefore it's a good thing if they declare these rules. But we want to be very skeptical and critical whether the BRICS countries will always join their own rules, but at least they're talking about rules. It's better to talk about rules than values, because values have this colonialistic allured attitude to it.
In the BRICS declaration distributed at the end of the BRICS summit, trade and economic development are also the main focus. A rule-based international system, according to the South African media leader, is crucial for his country, especially for its potential development.
I think for South Africa and the Africa at large, including Ethiopia and Egypt, who are members of BRICS, one thing I can say is significant is about ensuring that the rules of the World Trade Organization are respected, and are ensuring that the least developed countries are really are given space for them to grow, are given space for them to develop practically without undermining them. And as you know, that Africa has been trading with the world, and yet at the end of the day, the part that Africa takes out of those trade engagements is not necessarily really in favor of Africa's growth and Africa's development. So I think this statement really drives home that without a fair ways of trading, Africa is not really going to grow and get people out of poverty as the world suggests it wants.
African continent is certainly rich in natural resources, that is for sure. Many of these raw materials are crucial for green technology to be further developed, and also for the green industrialization, quote unquote. So how do you see African countries and economies can take better advantage of this opportunity, while at the same time to make sure it is for the longer benefits of the African countries?
I think it all boils to a win-win way and mannerism of negotiating. I think hence the WTO rules are quite crucial. As I said, that if we don't negotiate you can negotiate in good faith, but if you are really suppressed in what you can do and the preferences and the bias of how we've used these rules before, ensuring that the BRICS as a unity should really tackle those, I'll call them bottlenecks, that are not in favor of Africa. And if we can change that, then globalization can really be a mechanism for everyone to benefit.